Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. I'm Matt Perkins, joined as always by BadgerBlitz.com publisher and editor-in-chief John McNamara. Great to see you as always, buddy.
Good to see you too, Matt.
All right, John. It's March already, which means March Madness is coming up. We'll be talking basketball here in just a little bit. But we're here first to talk football, some football recruiting, and a pretty notable offer, John, that went out this week. That's Travis Burgess, quarterback out of Georgia, who looks like he's going to be taking a visit already. We've been talking about the same couple names in the 2026 quarterback class for a while right now, most notably Ryan Hopkins. Where does Burgess sort of fit in the mix with all this, and how did this come about?
Yeah, it's a fairly recent recruitment, because when I got a chance to talk to him, he said, him and Kenny Guyton had just been talking for about a week or two, and then the offer came through. And what's interesting, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it sounds like Wisconsin's going to get an official visit from him. He mentioned 6 schools that he'd like to take officials to. The biggest one is probably that Auburn official that he has pegged. I think it's that last weekend in May. They're probably the team to beat right now. So if he gets out of that weekend, I think that the other 5 schools, Wisconsin included, can feel pretty good about that. I don't want to say he's a plan B or a backup, because that's not where he falls. But really, I think a lot of the attention right now is focused on Ryan Hopkins, the kid from California. He's got an official schedule to Wisconsin as well, plans to be up in the spring. So he's maybe the most realistic option, but it sounds like Wisconsin's trying to stack up some other targets that could fit that offense as well. He mentioned talking to, Jeff Grimes and obviously Kenny Guyton a lot. So I think it speaks a lot that Wisconsin, even though it was a recent offer, is now really kind of firmly in the mix with him with that official visit that he's talking about doing sometime in June.
Skill set wise, how does he fit in? How does he look? How does he compare, especially to Hopkins?
Yeah, I think he brings a little bit more versatility, in my opinion, than Hopkins. But I think Hopkins is a pretty good athlete as well. When I talked to Burgess, he talked about Wisconsin liking his ability to play in the shotgun and under center. So maybe that's a little hint at what Jeff Grimes' offense could look like. He talked about the leadership that he brought, and that's something that Kenny Guyton mentioned to him as well. So I think that obviously he's a guy that fits what Wisconsin wants to do, but the gun and under center talk was something that was interesting as well. And then, one thing he mentioned too is Guyton's message was, we want to build through high school recruiting. We don't want to continue to get those senior transfers, which they've done for the last 3 years. Now, that could be recruiting high school speak that you're just giving to high school kids, or that could truly be the way that Wisconsin wants to move. I think that would be Wisconsin's preference. I know that's kind of a big picture topic, but we'll have to see. They've taken 3 senior transfers over the last 3 years. I think they want to get out of that trend, but it will rely on getting guys like a Hopkins or a Burgess or a guy like Carter Smith in the previous cycle to build those guys up within the program. So that remains to be seen. But, a lot of good stuff that Burgess had to say. And I think the biggest thing, does he get past that Auburn official to open the door for those other 5 schools potentially, or I guess any other schools that offer in the spring here moving forward?
A couple other interesting 2026 names that have either popped up as new offers and sort of resurfaced as guys who are going to be coming on official visits and things like that. Obviously, for me, if you've been listening to the show for any length of time whatsoever, I like to talk about the offensive line. Calvin Obot is an interesting name to me, who recently put Wisconsin in his top 10. This is going to be a smaller offensive line class, and he's a pretty notable recruit who's got some pretty big offers. Top 250 player out of Indiana, and he's got offers from Ohio State, Oregon, Wisconsin, Tennessee, you name it. He seems to have offers. Is there a legit shot here with him?
Well, he hasn't been on campus yet, but he does have that visit, I believe, pegged for March 20th. And like you mentioned, Matt, Wisconsin's kind of in his top group right now of the schools that he released. I don't know if it was an 8 or a 10. I can't remember off the top of my head.
It was a 10.
Yeah. So, a lot of it depends on when, what happens when they get these guys up on campus. And then, can you get them back in June for that official? those dates are kind of piling up. That last weekend in May and then that first weekend in June. There's a lot of guys that Wisconsin has pegged to be on campus. He's not one of them yet, but it's interesting if you look at some of their spring guys, they're trying to not necessarily double dip, but they're trying to get these guys on campus in the spring for a spring camp visit, and then right away again in that early official visit period for Wisconsin, which is that last weekend in May, 1st in June. So they've had some success doing that in the past cycle where, they got a kid up in April, got him back up in June, and then we're able to kind of secure that commitment. So it'll be interesting to see what from these group of spring visitors that are able to kind of double down again and get them back, for an official visit in the summer. So I think Obot falls in that same kind of category for sure. There's a lot of kind of intriguing offensive linemen that Wisconsin's been on that, Coach Blas has been on. So
what is it, Peyton Zyrer or Wilson Zyrer? One that popped this week as a new offer. He's another one I think is interesting to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, and a guy like Gavin Meyer, kind of getting ahead of ourselves here, but he'll be on campus this weekend for his junior day visit. He's an in-state kid with an offer from Wisconsin. Does he eat up one of those spots? Because like you said, Matt, this is going to be a smaller group after taking 10 over the last 2 cycles, so it's going to be interesting to see how this group kind of lays out here in the next couple weeks, couple months here.
Yeah. Another, speaking of in-state guys, Kobe Russell looks like he's going to be coming up. What's the latest on his recruitment?
Yeah, still, he's hasn't got that big, Power 4 offer just yet, but I think he's on the cusp of that. Wisconsin likes the versatility. When I talked to him, I think that corner makes sense, but he could also play safety. When I talked to him maybe about a month ago, Paul Haynes had been at the school, and he mentioned the recruitment of 2 kids from the 25 cycle, Trey Poteet from inside the state, who ends up going to Tennessee, and then Marion Moore, who didn't have an offer for Wisconsin, but they really went at him hard with a preferred walk-on. And they said, we don't want to let a kid like you or those guys leave the state in this cycle. So, he's got nice size. And if you feel like a guy at that size can play cornerback at this level, I think can certainly be in that offer conversation. So maybe he's a guy that get on campus for a junior day, and obviously he can make that trip again for fall camp and then potentially for an official visit. So I don't know that you necessarily need to move at an accelerated pace with a guy like Kobe Russell, but I think he's very much in that offer consideration. And I think corner is going to be a very important spot for them in this class. You're probably looking for 3, potentially 4 guys at corner in this 26 cycle.
John, you mentioned going after Moore as a preferred walk-on. Are preferred walk-ons going to be going by the wayside? Because, we saw Grady O'Neill hit the transfer portal this week, PWO wide receiver. With the new rules having to get the rosters down to 105 by the end of spring camp, Wisconsin still has 119, 120 on their roster, I think, right now. A, are we even going to see really PWOs in the future? And B, what does this mean for the guys who are currently on the squad?
Those are all really good questions. And like you said, I believe that they have to get down to 105 after spring camp. So if fans are expecting a big influx of guys coming into the program via the portal, I don't see that happening. I think it's going to be more of how can we get down to that 105. And like you said, Matt, I think they're at 120 right now or 119 with Grady O'Neill leaving. So that's, 15 slots that you got to fill up, or I should say not fill up, or
you got to call.
Deplete, get rid of. So those are going to be conversations that we're having. So those are guys that are, you would expect put their name in the transfer portal. I don't want to speculate at, it's going to be this guy or this guy or this guy, but if they have to get down to that 105, there are going to have to be moves made on the roster, and that's why you have a general manager. It feels like an NFL training camp where you need to get down to 53. What is that, the NFL cut?
53.
Yeah, and and there's no practice squad, or maybe there will be a practice squad. You tell these guys, hey, just stay on campus and go. Well, I was going to say the shell, but they tore the shell down.
Ain't no
the
shell
surf,
anymore.
Yeah, go to the surf. Stay in shape. We'll try to feed you every now and then if a guy goes down, maybe you bring a guy that's just kind of hanging out on campus to be that 105.
So I will say, at least in my experience for the track team, when I was cut after my freshman year, they told me if I wanted to hang around, do club track for the year, and keep working at it and come back the next year. They don't really have club tackle football, I don't think. Maybe personally, I'll tell those guys to go play rugby for the year, but go do something if you still want to be around UW. But it's it's a brand new day. I feel bad for the guys who came to UW as PWOs because of that walk-on tradition, right? Like, it's such a thing that has been ingrained in Wisconsin culture for so long. And then if this sort of plays out like the way we expect it to, John, like, that could be a pretty decent blow for Wisconsin, because it's not Alabama or Ohio State where it's just 5 stars backing up 5 stars. The history of PWOs coming in, working in 2, 3, 4 years, and then being contributor is huge. And it's just not, if that's not going to be a viable option moving forward, that narrows the margin of error even more.
Yeah, and you talk about the things that Wisconsin has done well, or things that you would deem a Wisconsin advantage. It was very much getting these preferred walk-ons to come in and pass up scholarship opportunities in order to come to Wisconsin, in order to play at this level, to develop within the program, and then be guys in their 3rd, 4th, 5th year. And if you're going down to 105, obviously everyone has to follow that rule. But at a school like Wisconsin, that seems to take away an advantage that the program has had in the past. You look at the 120 they're at right now, you would assume a bulk of the guys who will leave will be guys with that walk-on tag on them. So again, I will have to see how that looks. But just as we're talking through it, it sounds crazy to have a pocket of guys that you say, can you remain as a student and then you will be next up? But like, what if a guy goes down in the spring and he's out for the year, or a guy goes down early in fall camp and he's out for the year, multiple guys? I think that you're going to have to be able to find guys to be 104 or 105 to replace, or I guess I should say,
106, 107.
You're 106 for us, or you're 107, or you're 108 for us. You're the next wide receiver on campus in line. Can you play some intramurals? Can you stay in shape? It sounds crazy to say, but with big time injuries, I think you're going to have to replenish the best you can, and potentially keeping these guys on campus in some capacity to be ready to potentially play. I mean, it's a new world, new things that you're thinking through. I'm sure Wisconsin's thought about this, but it's not a crazy thing, because it's a significant chunk that they're going to have to take out to get to 105.
I was going through the list yesterday, and I'm looking through there. I'm like, also, like, there's some guys I'm like, I think that kid has some serious potential. Like, I wish he had 2 more years, 3 more years to develop, but he's a redshirt freshman, and there are 7 scholarship guys ahead of him. Like, it's unfortunately a fact of life now in college football here in 2026 or 2025. Well, 2026 recruiting class, I should say, is what we've been looking at. Other news out of the football program, though, that just dropped was that the opener has been moved to Thursday night, which personally, I think is a great thing. I think it's a great thing to have the opener on Thursday night, get it over, out of the way, get those early jitters out of the way, especially if you're going to have a MAC team that you're opening with. Right, John? Am I wrong there? In
Miami, Ohio? Is that
they're a MAC team. Also, I want, obviously, we all want Wisconsin to do well and things like that, but my sister-in-law went to Miami of Ohio, so this is like a doubly important victory for me. But an 11 a.m. kickoff on Saturday, I feel like it would be a lot lazier. I feel like you'll get a better crowd on a Thursday night. And I think it'll be a little bit more locked in. I think this is actually a huge win for the program to have a Thursday night opener.
I do too, and I think that a lot of the news that comes out now with the program, people just get upset about. I guess I personally don't like when Wisconsin plays on Friday, but I get it. I'm a high school guy too. Like, I enjoy high school football in the state. But like, strategically, if that's your opener on Thursday, you're preparing for that, right? Since today, right? Spring camp, fall camp, that gives you an additional Friday, Saturday of preparation for the next week. And in addition to preparation, it gives you 2 more days to recover. So that's from a Wisconsin point of view. I think it's great, to start that season a little earlier, get 2 additional days.
Send those coaches out on the road for Friday night.
Yeah, didn't think about that, but sure, you could absolutely do that. Get some in-state targets, send a bunch to Chicago. I think there's a lot of things that it plays well for Wisconsin. And then let's not kid ourselves, Matt. They're playing on Thursday because of money. That's what it is. So I think that part of it and the logistical part of it do work in Wisconsin's favor. Now, the schedule doesn't get any easier, but I do think that this is a small advantage now that they've kind of carved out at the start of the season. How much dividends will it pay? I don't know, but I do think it probably fits that schedule a little bit better at the start of the year for Wisconsin.
Especially with that schedule having Alabama on it early. I'm going to be going to the Alabama game, John. So maybe I'll have to do some BadgerBlitz TV live from Tuscaloosa. That could be fun for us. But let's flip over now, John, to the basketball program. As it is March Madness. Wisconsin competitive game at Michigan State this weekend ended up with a loss, and then a nice victory over Minnesota last night as we record this here on Thursday morning. One more game, Penn State in the regular season before the Big Ten tournament. I feel like Wisconsin should win that game. If they don't, I'd be pretty concerned, probably more concerned than I was about the loss against Oregon. Coming down the stretch, how are we feeling about the team and how are we feeling about sort of the state of things heading into the Big Ten tournament?
Yeah, I think, that was a competitive game against Minnesota. Minnesota's not a great team, but look, that was their Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament, everything kind of wrapped up into one. So, I mean, that was their Super Bowl, and Wisconsin, obviously comes out and builds a pretty significant lead. And then I think Minnesota took the lead at one point in the second half. I think they were up 1. And then Wisconsin battles back. I think you really like what you saw from Jack Janicki, kind of that grittiness down the stretch. Kamari McGee played a lot of minutes, didn't score, but I think obviously played a pretty vital role. John Blackwell seemed to take his game to another level.
Yeah, he was taking a lot of shots.
Yeah, a lot of shots. He looked strong. A
lot of shots.
And he looked like he was the most physical guy on the court last night. I think that's a positive sign for Wisconsin. Now you go into Penn State. I believe if you win that game, you secure that double bye in the Big Ten tournament, which is significant, not having to play that early Wednesday game, or maybe, I'm not sure. I think it is the Wednesday game. So you feel good about where you are heading to Penn State. Max Klesmit's health, I think, would be the biggest thing that you're looking towards as you're moving into Penn State. It sounds like he's going to play in that game, but he's missed the last 2. So
I wouldn't play him. Personally, I just wouldn't play him. I would let him rest more, get even healthier, and then be ready for the Big Ten tournament. Heck, if it's still lingering, I might save him for the NCAA tournament. I don't see a reason to re-aggravate that for, especially against Penn State. Like, I see zero reason he should suit up against Penn State.
Yeah, maybe he suits up, warms up, feels where he's at. That's not a game. I mean, in terms of what Wisconsin thinks it can do in March, I'm probably in the same boat as you, Matt. Now, can you keep a guy like Klesmit off, a senior who's going to play his last home game at Camp Randall.
At Kohl Center.
At the Kohl Center.
I hadn't thought about that. Maybe he comes in, starts, and plays 5 minutes, and then is wrapped up for the night or something. But
he seems like a guy that would be hard to keep off the court if he's cleared to play. But I understand what you're saying. I tend to kind of lean that way as well. Especially,
I'd forgotten about the senior day aspect of it. That's a really good point. Like I'm not going to say I'm going to retract my statement, but I might take like half a step back on and say I still think he shouldn't play, but I understand why he would.
But you do feel a little bit better with the way Kamari McGee fits seamlessly into that starting lineup. Janicki's playing at a pretty high level.
Janicki's looked really good the last couple of games. He had moments against Michigan State where I was like, wow, like he is playing like he really belongs.
Right. And I think that helps you maybe even just limit the minutes. And then you saw a little Cam Hunter last night too, which was interesting. And I think he goes in the game and Minnesota hit 2 threes. I don't necessarily think that was because of Cam Hunter, but it just kind of looks a little maybe we need to get our normal guys back out there. So, I think he plays, but in what capacity, we'll see. Will be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's always interesting to see what you have to say here, John, on Badger Blitz TV. It's always great to see you here every week. Please make sure that you are tuning in, subscribing to here on our YouTube page, subscribing to BadgerBlitz.com for the best info and messages, message boards, and all that good stuff anywhere in the Node Manager universe. Until next week, he's Sean McNamara. I'm Matt Perkins, and we'll see you in the den.